I'm Rachel Moore, and this is Crash Course U.S. History, Cronin style. Today we're going to be talking about the Cold War, an era of hostility between the two world superpowers at the time, the United States and the Soviet Union. Think back to your worst breakup. You know, right about that time where you and your ex wanted to annihilate each other? That was essentially the relationship between America and the USSR. The United States had never liked the communism and awesome mustaches of the USSR. We're looking at you, Stalin. Part of the reason for our delayed entry into World War II was that we didn't want to work with the USSR. I mean, come on, people, it was hard to look past that mustache. On the other hand, the Soviet Union despised capitalism and were being particularly wary of the fact that we had just bombed Japan.
The growing distrust between the two nations would bring the era of the Cold War, affecting both foreign and domestic policy of the United States.
But Rachel, all these guys from history, they don't really matter, right? Because they're all dead.
Me from the past, I suggest you shape up now and start paying attention in history class, because someday you're going to be in AP US history and there's going to be death by question, sweat, tears, and a dictatorial teacher that's going to make you do this video. We're going to focus on how the Cold War affected America in three ways: politically, economically, and socially. Politically, a lot of things were changing. American policy shifted from domestic policy to foreign policy as we turned from focusing on ending the Second World War to focusing on ending the USSR and their evil spread of communism.
We'll examine the policies of the first three presidents of the Cold War, starting with President Truman, whose actions would establish the attitude towards the Cold War for the rest of the 20th century. Let's go to the Thought Bora.
President Truman was pretty hardcore about being hardcore. He believed military force was the way to keep communism at bay and enforce containment. In fact, Truman brought troops into the Korean War and intervened in the Arab nations on the creation of Israel. Truman established the National Securities Act in 1947 to keep order back at home. This led to the CIA and those great shows you see on television about government-funded psychological torture experiments. Yay, torture. His successors, Presidents Eisenhower and Kennedy, were no better. Eisenhower made full use of the brand new CIA for covert foreign operations in Iran and Latin America. And throughout their presidencies, both of these presidents continued to expand the military effort for the sake of containment.
Thanks, Thought Bora.
Oh, it's time for the mystery document? So, the object is I read the mystery document, and if I get it right, I don't get shocked, and if I get it wrong, which is probably what will happen, I will get shocked. Alright.
The gravity of the situation which confronts the world today necessitates my appearance before a joint session of the Congress. The foreign policy and the national security of this country are involved. One aspect of the present situation, which I wish to present to you at this time for your consideration and decision, concerns Greece and Turkey. It would be an unspeakable tragedy if these countries, which have struggled so long against the overwhelming odds, should lose that victory for which they sacrificed so much. Should we fail to aid Greece and Turkey in this fateful hour, the effect will be far-reaching to the west as well as to the east. We must take immediate and resolute action.
It says the gravity situation necessitates my appearance before a joint session of the Congress. Someone who's appearing before Congress would have to be like someone who would make a decision about that. So I'm guessing it's a political figure. So if we should fail to aid Greece and Turkey, so that's talking about aiding them against communism and stuff. So that's talking about containment. I don't feel like it should be this easy, but Truman? I got it right! I actually got it right! Oh! While the Second World War pulled the US out of an economic slump, it devastated European countries, leaving them vulnerable. The Truman Doctrine was basically a plea for the United States to provide financial aid for European reconstruction. America funded the reconstruction of these nations through programs such as the European Recovery Program. You might know it as the Marshall Plan. In a similar fashion, the Eisenhower Doctrine requested financial aid from Congress to secure Middle Eastern nations from communism. The economic policy of the Soviet Union also strongly affected America. Being the communist-hating capitalist heroes, the United States believed in consumerism and made sure to buy goods that helped the economy grow. And then there's the space race. Bora, we're talking technology here. I need my robotic shirt. That's better.
The unforeseen emergence of the Soviet satellite Sputnik had a huge effect on the U.S. economy. Almost immediately, money was diverted into a race for supremacy of the final frontier.
While the Cold War affected America politically and economically, it's arguable that the biggest transformation we had was in our social atmosphere. Social media was converted to propaganda as the government promoted anti-communism and patriotism.
This social movement had the side effect of creating paranoia of communism, and many, especially immigrants, found themselves accused of being communists, with little evidence to back these claims.
Meanwhile, discrimination was still making things difficult for blacks and other minorities. But because of oppositions to the USSR's policies, a window for reform was opened.
President Truman pointed out to the American public that it didn't make sense to support the downfall of the Soviet Union while supporting restrictions based on race.
Eventually, he would put Executive Order 9981 into action, which eliminated racial discrimination in the U.S. Armed Forces. The landmark case of Brown versus Board of Education would overturn the Plessy versus Ferguson doctrine of separate but equal and lead to the desegregation of public schools. The Cold War, of course, was not the only reason for the Civil Rights Movement, but it opened the eyes of the people to the dissonance of their morals. Of the things that the U.S. took from the Cold War, a major one was technology. The end of the arms race and the space race meant secrets could be revealed, ideas could be shared, and in the future, robotics clubs could be formed. Another thing the U.S. would take was our status and responsibility as a foreign power. Nowadays, this meddling is a never-ending source of debate. Should the U.S. expend our supplies for the sake of our ideals?
After all, our role in foreign conflict can cause plenty of controversy at home. Is it really worth the trouble?
But of course, like everything in history, the truth is more complicated than it appears. Thanks for watching, and I won't see you next week because this was a project.
Crash Course U.S. History Cronin Style is produced and directed by myself and Bora Hong. Our script and video editor is myself. The show is written by my high school history friend Bora Hong, and our graphics team is Thought Bora. Thanks for watching Crash Course, and as we say in Mr. Cronin's class, razzle dazzle, thrill, and amaze.